Hi everybody, Peretz, Eichler, aka the Reb with a cause, and the cause is you. A life filled with meaning, value, and purpose as expressed right here on Hit a Brute, on the table with me, where we discuss issues across the board. You know, there was a fellow who was standing outside a casino in Atlantic City, and as he walked in to sit down at a blackjack table, he saw a sign that said, "You have a gambling problem, call this number." Sat down at the blackjack table, and as he was about to begin, he called that number. He said, "I'm in Atlantic City. I have a gambling problem." They said, "Yes, how we can help you?" He said, "I have a jack and a 4. Should I draw or fold?" Unfortunately, there are people who do not recognize that they have an addiction. And the only way to solve an addiction is by recognizing there's a problem. It's become epidemic today. Not just gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, internet addiction, and others, which may surprise you. Here to discuss the impact of addiction in the world at large, and particularly within what's happened within the Jewish community in recent years, who are not immune to this plague, is Rabbi Dovid Goldwasser. He's the Rabbi of congregation B'nai Yitzchak in Flatbush, but he's also the Machaber, the author of multiple books, 3 of which on mental health, of which he is an expert and a sought-after consultant in the field. He is also a visiting professor both at Long Island University and at Touro College. And his erudition, his wisdom is sought upon by people around the world for his expertise, both in the general world at large of psychological ailments, particularly in the realm of addiction, as well as all things Jewish. He's written a phenomenal book. It is called The Addicted Soul, and it's the world of addiction, internet, gambling, drinking, shopping, texting, things that we would hardly ever have thought of as being addictive. What is addiction, Rabbi Goldwasser, and what are the parameters of what defines addictions today, and just how serious a problem it is? Because when I was looking at a brochure, and just on drinking, they said alcohol kills more than 100,000 people a year, drunk driving kills about 15,000 people, opioids, heroin, they become epidemic. Every community that you go to. What is going on?
You know, they say that the addiction has come about in the plague of addictions across the board because we have an addictive mind. It's addictive thinking today. I can get what I need, and I can get it now. Everything is at our beck and call, especially those things that up until now were very difficult to access. I can get it on the computer in a day. I can have it at my door. I can see things that I could have never seen years ago.
Instant gratification isn't fast enough. It's not fast enough.
Exactly. It's a moment. It's on the moment. The greatest problem that we have today is that whenever there is a lacking, whenever I'm in need, when I'm a little bit down, so what the world is saying is use artificial means and get yourself back up. What that does is it increases our need for outside stimuli. Once we have greater needs, so then we have to fulfill them more. Whenever you feed this lion, it wants more and more. The addiction is the thing that makes us rely on something for our own gratification, for our happiness, or just to live another day, to go on. The more that a person relies on it, the more that they get out of regular living. They no longer use rationale. They will stay up all night to watch the computer. They won't be able to get up for their job in the day. If they have an addiction towards gambling, they will use any money that's available to them. They will go beyond any boundary, steal from their best friend, from their father, from their mother, from their wife or their husband. Just in that idea comes to mind, a woman came into me, middle-aged woman, very, very upset, distraught. Her husband has a gambling addiction. Okay, so one day she comes home, it was on a Thursday, and she sees that the candelabra, her Eichler, is missing.
Which she would light for
Shabbos candles.
Shabbos and Yom Tov.
Shabbos candles. And they felt terrible, and her husband was crying that night. Who could have done such a terrible thing to come in and steal something like that out from the house? Obviously it was antique, obviously it was something very holy, and they were upset. A few weeks they went without it, and she lit candles and little traveling candlesticks, $1 or $2. She was on Flatbush Avenue. There's a pawn shop where people pawn goods to make a little bit of money. She's walking past and happens to glimpse in the window, and she sees her candelabra. She runs in. No doubt, that is hers. On the bottom, there is a special marking that it belongs to her. She comes and says, "How do I get this back?" He said, "Well, if you want it back, this is the amount of money." He says, "Where did you get this from?" Well, there was a man that came in, a middle-aged man, and he looked like he was religious. He begins to describe the husband. She goes home and says, "Shlomo, how could you have?" He breaks down and cries. Imagine the types of things that come out from an addiction. And that's not only in that area, in gambling, it's in texting, internet, shopping, drinking, drugs, you name it, even addictive relationships where it passes all the normal boundaries. Addiction means I cannot live without it. I can't go on without it. I need to have it to make it through the day. If I can just light up one time, that's okay, I'll make it through the day. If I can't, I'm gonna go crazy. And I'm not gonna go cold turkey because I don't wanna suffer. So the addictive mind says, I've gotta worry the entire day. How am I gonna quench my thirst? How am I gonna put out today's fire so that I can make it through? And it is crazy because in today's world, we are almost feeding in to the addictive world. Example, something that most people would never think is addiction at all. A guy stops me, I'm in Borough Park, big guy. He stops me and he says, "Can you help me with addiction, Rabbi Goldwasser? This is you're an angel from heaven that you're here today." I said, "Oh yeah, how can I help you, sir?"
Not like the guy outside the casino, did he have a jack in the tomb? What should he hold a drawer?
Yeah, not the same. So I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "I'm addicted." So I said, "What are we talking about?" He says, "Garlic."
Garlic?
Garlic. How can you be addicted to garlic? He pulls out from his pocket a piece of garlic.
He doesn't get it from anybody else because most people won't get too close to it.
Won't get too close to garlic, it's true, but it has a quality. So he told me he cannot be without garlic. On Shabbat, on the Sabbath, he keeps garlic in the shul, his garlic in the home, just in case he needs an emergency.
This is kind of like a obsessive compulsive thing. That's no?
Anything can turn into it. Believe it or not, I went into a store about a month later. There is a package of food called garlic addiction. Garlic addiction. So what we're doing is we're feeding the idea that you can be addicted, even to something like garlic. Something like tobacco or drinking or other things like that, gambling, that naturally have the addictive element within it. You can imagine how much worse it is.
Sure, I mean, it's egregious, serious, obviously, somebody being addicted to garlic. But you're not going to find somebody holding up a store or robbing from their parents or going to jail for a garlic addiction, I don't think. With the other addictions, I mean, the thinking itself is what you're driving at is really
Peretz, it's the whole mindset of today's world. I gotta have it now. So the garlic
I like
becomes
it,
the
I
craze.
want it, I need it.
Right. Take cigarettes, right? So you take a child. The first time a child takes a cigarette, coughs, feels like spitting up, can't continue, he's got to regurgitate, right? It's terrible. But then when he continues, it becomes interesting. Then it becomes addictive. Then he can't get away from it. I had a guy one time, a man about 40, and everyone knows Shabbat, you can't smoke, right? Can't do it. You got to stay away one day. How's he going to do it? He's smoking a pack a day. Shabbat, he's going to go Friday night until Saturday night without a cigarette. He found the brilliant Eichler. He found a way to do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. The city buses, they let out a lot of exhume, the exhaust that comes out the fumes.
I know a guy who dreamt that it was he was a tailpipe, and he woke up exhausted. Yeah.
Well, this is exactly what he did. No joke. He followed the exhaust, walked behind the bus in order to breathe it in.
But that's lethal. I mean, that could be fatal.
It doesn't matter. Anyone will tell you, at war, they can't get alcohol. They use rubbing alcohol. Doesn't matter. Either potency can kill a person. But it doesn't matter, because when an individual is addicted, they're thinking with their addicted mind. They're not thinking with their rationale. So I'll steal my mother's ring. I will do anything that I need to do. I will do something on the internet that I've never done in my life. I will meet a person, God forbid, chas v'shalom, that will change my life forever and ruin my family. But I will do it because I'm addicted. That is what we are finding today. And it cuts across all socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious background. People, doesn't matter where they're at in life, old, young, little, as we just spoke about before the program began.
In the community in where I live, in Lakewood, there's actually a committee of which I'm part of to prevent underage drinking, indulgence in drugs. I asked them how old are they when they start. They start with third graders with coloring books. Third graders.
They have to. I was in Washington. They invited me to a school to speak about eating disorders and the addiction in terms of eating disorders. This is a great place to speak about eating disorders in Wolf and Lamb. It's wonderful. It cures it all. So a fantastic thing. The principal of the school, I spoke to all grades, starting from the 4th grade up through the 12th grade. The principal came over to me and said, would you mind, we would like you to get exposure, in the 5th grade is not going to have you, so would you mind eating lunch with them? I said, it's a pleasure. I'll be happy to. I sat down and there was maybe there were 25 at the table. All of a sudden, they served some various items. The first thing one of the children did, 5th grade, picks up, looks at the nutritional panel. Wait a minute, 20 fat calories? Oh no. I couldn't believe it. And I'm sitting here, 5th graders, and we're having a discussion about fat calories. It's an obsession. And what happens is it goes beyond the norm. It crosses the boundary. And then all they see is what they're after. They can no longer see the world around them.
Now, how did this happen in terms of our community, the Jewish world at large, in any portion, any part of the world, whether it's in Eretz Israel, the United States of America, Europe? I mean, this never infiltrated the Jewish community to the extent that it has now. What happened?
It seems as though we used to be an insular community. In the shtetl in Europe, even when we first came to New York, to America, wherever, all the different cities, London and Gateshead, we used to be insular. We could keep our own. We had our own philosophy, we had our own outlook.
And we still do,
able to protect.
We still do.
But now the world at large has joined in with us. We all have access. We're all exposed. The mass media has done something to the community that even in the most far-flung, most insular communities, I have a couple in mind that you would think have no influence from the outside. Nothing is able to infiltrate. Today, they know everything. And if a person is looking for it, they can find it within minutes. So that has greatly changed the world. There's also greater desperation today. There's more yeush, despair. Our self-esteem has plummeted. The average child needs a boost in their self-esteem. As much as education has changed, and it has changed for the better, and we're doing a great job, and parents are wonderful, but we haven't got the clue. We have not got the key in boosting the self-esteem and building children and giving them that idea that they are something, and no matter how they are, no matter what they look like, no matter what their IQ is, no matter what their brain power or ability to memorize is, that they are a valuable individual that's going to blossom in life. We have not got that idea across to the kids.
Rabbi Goldwasser, if I understand you correctly, I mean, first of all, I remember, I think it was Henry David Thoreau. I'm not sure it was either him or Yogi Berra. I always got the two confused. A little cultural reference there. But I think he said most people, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. But today it's no longer quiet, it's tumultuous, the desperation that we feel. Now, are you saying, Rabbi Goldwasser, that at the heart of this, or at least that in part, we can attribute some of this to a lack of self-esteem, that people just don't have enough sense of self-worth and therefore they're looking outside themselves?
Definitely.
As simple as that?
Definitely. A girl came to me from Long Island, very talented, 19 years old. She told me I have a deep secret. and I have never told anybody in our community. I want to tell you, it was before Yom Kippur. I was afraid. What is the secret? She said, I'm on heavy drugs. I'm on heavy drugs. I began to talk with her. It's Yom Kippur. It's a new year. We can all get out of whatever we're in, no matter how deep we are in the mud. We can clean up and get out. We can dry out. We can do whatever we need. There's therapy. There's Hashem. You can reach up high and ask God to help you. He can make a way out of nowhere. Hayat Hashem Tiksor is the hand of God ever too short. And I spoke with her. Then I mentioned, just as a, an addendum, I said, and you know what? With God's help, you'll be married. That's the first time she stopped me. She said, who would ever want to marry me? Here's a wonderful girl, a precious girl, talented girl. And when she said, who would ever want to marry me? She meant it in her heart of hearts. She had zero esteem. Many of the people have zero esteem. So the addiction builds them up. It gives them a raison d'être. They want, wow, I'm living for it because I'm going to get that smoke. I'm going to get that reefer. I'm going to be able to shoot up. I'm going to be looking forward to the next time I can get that Russian gambling. Then I'm going to be something because I'm going to be having something to live for. And that gives them their excitement, gives them a sense of purpose. Almost that becomes their life. That's like their job. If you ask them what's more important, going to work or shooting up, they'll tell you shooting up. Individual ask you, don't you want to get up on time tomorrow morning for work or for it? Yeah, but I got to watch the next movie. But you saw 3 movies. I know, but the next movie after that, I'm going to go to sleep. And then they never go to sleep, and the next day they fall asleep on the job, and you know the end of it.
And then there's peer pressure, and something which you refer to in the addicted soul as, I believe it's called the inhibition effect. What is that exactly?
This is an amazing thing that is found. Texting became very big today. People would rather text than talk. I prefer talking.
Me too.
Someone will
imagine if we were doing this by texting, it'd be ridiculous.
What a show. The truth is that people have gotten so much into texting, they've forgotten the art of communication. Someone will text to me a very complicated halachic question, and I will write back, could you please call me? And then they will text back, could we do this by text? I would prefer to text. What has happened is the texting has removed a lot of the filters that we used to have when we needed to talk to each other. I will text somebody something that I'm actually afraid to tell them in person, something that I'll be unabashed about, something I won't be ashamed about, something I'll even cross the line when I'm going to text you. I would never say it out. And what happens is that this inhibition effect usually starts in very early, and a person will begin to text. Then they build up this whole text. I can't wait to see what you're going to text me back. And then I'm going to live in the world of make-believe and fantasy because I think I'm texting you something and you're texting me something we may never think about or never do. But in the texting world, in cyberspace, I'm getting a whole life out of this thing. And then what happens is a person gets into deep trouble because they text. The number one reason for killing that's attributed to killing in vehicles is no longer alcohol, it's texting. Unfortunately, vehicular manslaughter is because people were involved in texting. If I'm talking on the phone, that's one thing. If I'm even drinking, so I'm still trying to concentrate. If I'm texting and I just sent an unbelievable text and I want to see what's the response to it, I cannot resist. Even I'm going down the highway, I'm traveling on the superhighway in California or the superhighway in Eretz Yisrael, I cannot resist. When it goes ping, I got to see what did you write. And if you wrote to me something exciting, something that is going to get my fantasies going or my thoughts going, I'm much more excited than even taking care of driving safely and where I'm driving into or oncoming traffic.
That's considered an addiction rather than just a really rotten habit?
It's addiction. That is addiction. I cannot stop it. I've got to keep my hands moving. I've got to see it. I can't wait for the next one. I will be charged, overcharged. A father brought in 1,032 texts. He got the cell phone bill for his son. And he said, this is ridiculous, 1,032? What is he doing? He must be texting all day and all night. But it completely takes a person over. That's texting addiction. I've had the question, how many times are you allowed to check your emails during the day? There's no halacha on it. There's no Jewish law on it. But people see that they've got to continue to watch it and look into cyberspace and see it, and it takes us over.
Even the non-Jewish world knows that. I mean, there's a book called Hamlet's Blackberry. You saw it probably,
Yes.
right? And this was actually a couple of years ago, and it's updated now. But he used the example from a scene in Hamlet where he takes out a tablet to write, and it couldn't be without it. But that he said they took a sabbatical. They based it on the Jewish Shabbos, that they would stop using the texting and all their devices. And he said their whole life changed. And he was a major journalist. So, but how do we? Let me just get to the core of this.
Good.
We've only begun to define the contours of the problem, and the problem is mind-boggling. I don't mean to be oversimplistic, but are there solutions, and what are we doing about it?
The solutions are numerous, depending on the exact addiction. All the addictions are cousins. They're all related, Peretz, as you know.
One big rotten family.
It is. And one can all of a sudden have comorbidity, and a person will switch over to a different addiction, and then they'll have 2 or 3 going at the same time. And they may have to go to 2 or 3 different therapists for it. The solution is...
And they wind up with therapist addiction. You go to this guy.
Exactly. And then they can't stop. And then they feel that the therapist is the one that's going to cure them. They're not curing themselves anymore. So I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to my therapist.
I would imagine the first thing is to recognize that a person has a problem.
Right. Number one, the 12-step program, which we know is basic. I've adapted it for the Jewish community, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with the 12-step program. I want to say it publicly. There is nothing within the 12-step program that is contrary to our basic beliefs.
And the fundamental beliefs,
fundamental,
is that it's God-based.
Right.
That there is a God base. The only thing I didn't quite like about it was when I became familiar was they keep referring to God as a higher power. I mean, that's kind of nice and tribute, but we know it's the Rabbi Shalom. It's God. It's not the higher power like it's some amorphous force. It's God.
100%. You're on the spot on, as they say. Because of that, I've changed the language. I've adopted it, which will be acceptable to everyone. I've changed some of the language so that we can be comfortable knowing that the Ribono Shalom, the Master of the world, is the Master of the world. There's no other word for it, no other term. What it is recognizing that we have done wrong, recognizing that I have a problem. Do you know how many people came into me coming on an addiction? They were caught by their husbands, by their wives, by their children. They're coming in because of a terrible situation in the family, and they will say, I'm not addicted. I did do it, and I've done it many times, but I could stop tomorrow.
Like Mark Twain, he could quit smoking anytime he wants. He did it 1,000 times.
Exactly. There are people that come in, and they're the worst. I had a guy with alcoholic. He came in, and his wife kept saying, "You're a drunk. You're a drunk." His wife was very,
They say if 3 people tell a person he's a drunk, you should just lie down.
Yeah. I ask her, please don't use the word drunk. We got a challenge with drinking, but don't say drunk. Anyhow, the guy comes in, and he told me, no, it's not a drinking problem. He has a certain depression, and he cures it through alcohol.
Oh.
So he was able to find a brilliant cure to his problem.
The ultimate rationalization.
It was an amazing, amazing thing to me.
Only a mind steeped in alcohol could come to that.
Will come out something like that. And I've had others that will not admit to it until rock bottom, until finally something goes on then they will admit, I do have a problem. Up until that time, they will deny it. As long as they deny it, they're not ready for help. Don't send them to a program. Don't give them a treatment center. They got to realize it in their own mind. Once they confess up, once they can look at themselves in the mirror and say, you have got to change. You have got to correct yourself. You are addicted. You are an addict. You have hurt people along the way. You have done things that you should not have. You have not been good to man or God. The person that cannot say that cannot face up to their addiction. They're going to live a life of lies. Their whole life is going to be built on covering so that you don't find out. I'm going to be able to bury it. Before I go into the office, I'm going to make sure that I use enough mouthwash and cologne that you're never going to know that I was smoking up all night or that I was drinking. I'm going to take no-dos when I get in the morning. I'm going to especially walk in so that everybody sees me. Hello, how you doing? Great.
Anything to camouflage it, disguise it, cover it up.
They become masters of disguise.
Masters of deception.
Masters of deception. The sleight of hand is so great, Houdini couldn't be as good as they are. Amazing thing. I once had a person on eating disorders, and the individual, the family never knew, and they ate together. It was phenomenal. The person used to wear a big collar on the shirt, and the collar was cut open. And when they thought the person was taking food, instead it was just going in this pocket that he made in the collar.
What was the reason for that?
Fake everybody out. Don't have an eating disorder. If I wanted to, I could eat everything. You give me the whole plate and I'll eat it. And unfortunately, so many people have in addiction, in the addictive
I've heard
world.
a ring around the collar, but never a herring around the collar.
You wouldn't believe it. You would not believe the things that have gone on.
This reminds me of what Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein once said about a fellow that had a drinking addiction, and he didn't want his wife to know, and he ran into the bathroom and he started, he saw that he had nicked himself in shaving, and he just put Band-Aids all over the place, and his wife came in and she found out that she knew exactly what was going on because the Band-Aids were all over the mirror. In other words, he had put the Band-Aids on the mirror.
Good
so
story.
A lot of people, no, I'm just saying it's Band-Aids on the mirror. How do you get the Band-Aids on the mirror how do you get a person other than, as you say, hitting rock bottom, or maybe there is no other way, other than law enforcement, something that happens where the person is hospitalized, low lane. Is there any other way, or are you just saying if a person doesn't hit rock bottom, they're just going to have to wait until they do? It's pretty terrifying.
If there is somebody who can cut through the layers, who can appeal to the individual, who can talk sense, and is no nonsense, and can't be fooled, then the individual could get through. It takes a person that has perception that can connect to the person who's addicted. If they don't connect, it's like you're just taking to talk all day.
Have you had success stories with people that you've actually been able to reach, get through, and take the step and be clean from whatever the addiction was?
Well, I tell you my favorite. My favorite is somebody came from out of country. I don't want to say the country. It doesn't matter. And they stepped into the office, and they came with their entire family just for treatment to see me. They would not see someone from the purely secular community. And the first day, at the end of the session, the individual told me that they were not willing to to be compliant with the therapy. So I said, I'm sorry, I'm not your man. The person said, what do you mean? I said, there's nothing for me to say. If you can't be compliant, I don't want to waste your time. I certainly don't want to waste my time because there's a lot of people I got to help. So I'm sorry. The individual walked out. The family called me, Rabbi, do you realize we just spent 6 tickets to come to New York? Do you realize we stopped everything, we quit, we're not going to our business, we have other people involved, and we brought the patients here? I said, I know, but they're not compliant. I don't want to waste your time, I don't want to waste your money, I don't want to waste my time. That was the first time that individual was ever told no in their life. Under duress, the person came back. They became one of my most successful stories of anyone. There's a book out, Tough Love. Some of the principles, I don't give my haskam, I'm not giving an approbation to that book, but some of the principles in tough love are important. I will not lend you any more money. I will not give you my charge card. I will not allow you to charge booze, alcohol on my card anymore. You won't do it. I will lock the door if you present a danger to the members in this family. I definitely, if they call me up, I'm not going to cover for you. I'm going to say exactly where I think that you're at. When a person realizes, do not become a codependent, do not become an individual that helps, that aids and abets an individual, enable the other person to go on and carry their addictive behaviors out. When a person says that, that is a very strong alarm. It's a shofar that blows and tells the person, wake up. You are in an addicted world. You're in a world of fantasy. All you see around there is an imagination world. You're in Disney World somewhere. You're in the princess, wherever it's at. You are certainly not in the real world. When you tell them this is the real world, you got to wake up. You got to become real. You have hurt people. You have hurt yourself. You're going down the drain. You let your Judaism go. You're not even holding on to those things that we hold to be sacred. When a person starts to hear that, it may be that they're going to start to understand that you really love them. Because if you really love them, you're willing to be strong. If you don't, so then they just say, I can take advantage of, oh, that guy, he's the nicest guy. That lady, I can pull the wool over her eyes. She'll never know. I can do all my behaviors and be in their house, and they're going to help me. And then my father knows the chief of police, and he's going to call the chief if I ever get into trouble. And I got lawyers. He can get me off anything. It doesn't matter. We all know lawyers. Everybody's got protexia. Unfortunately, we become very adept at how to get people off the hook, but it doesn't get them unhooked. It just gets them out of trouble for the time being, and then they won. Some people get into trouble psychologically just to see if they can get out of trouble. They don't even want to get into trouble, but they say, I want to get into this tight spot to see if I can get out of the tight spot. They need therapy. They need to recognize it. They need to go through the 12-step program. They need to go cold turkey. They got to separate. They got to know what it is. Can I go 2 days without a smoke? Can I go 4 days without a smoke? Can I go a week without hitting the bottle? That means even kiddush, grape juice, and not strong grape juice. I'm talking about the light stuff. Can they do it? Are they willing to make different changes in their life? Are they willing not to go past the liquor store on their way? Gambling, are they willing to say, I am not going to go to the casino? Are they willing to say, and look you straight in the eye, I will not go onto that site, which is a gambling site. I won't even play a friendly game of poker. I won't even play dreidel, if that's what it comes down to. Because if I play dreidel and there's a few dollars in between, that's also great. None of that. No, nothing. Gambling is so bad that I knew a person, he swore, I will never gamble. I'm not going to gamble. I promise. I'm not going anywhere near Atlantic City. He was leading a double life. So he found a great way to do it. He cashed his check. He got a salary check at the end of 2 weeks. He goes in the corner store and he buys 100 lottery tickets. It's gambling, just a little different, a little bit more legal, a little bit more kosher, but it's the same gambling. And I've had this on all different addictions. Relationship addiction is something in today's world a person has to watch. A person gets too hung up on a friend, and then they get upset with a friend, and then an unnatural whole relationship develops, and I can't go anywhere, and if that person doesn't go with me, I'll get especially angry, and I can only be me, and then I'll start to wear the same clothing as the other person. We have this blossoming now because there are relationships that are unhealthy. A person has to know the Giddarim. What does it mean to have a healthy relationship? What are the boundaries? Is it out? If I got to talk to my friend all night, or I got to text my friend all night, what's with that? You don't go to sleep anymore? You don't go to eat dinner anymore? You're texting with your friend? This is just an example of the many different addictions that are taking over life, and they're taking over regular people's life. A fascinating thing, it says, Im yu chatoechem kashonim, we quoted, if your sins are going to be red like scarlet, so Hashem says, I'll clean them, they'll be white like snow. Mm-hmm. So I saw one of the outstanding commentaries and says, shanim can also be according to years. We were used to a person getting involved in his teenage years, into 20-somethings. We weren't used to the person 60, 70, 80 getting involved in addiction. But in today's world, the addictions come out and pull us in. So even a person can be elderly and can be involved in a problem, an addiction, an internet problem, any of these things. Shopping addiction. I can sit down now, I can watch the program or tune into the website. Shopping, right? We've got an unbelievable watch. This watch will change your life. It will tell you when to wake up, when to go to sleep. What are your peak hours to go running? When you should eat, when you shouldn't eat. This watch will tell you what's going on the other side of the world. It will tell you how many steps you took today. So in the meantime, the guy's watching this, or the old lady's watching this elderly woman, and she says, I gotta have that watch. So immediately, they put their charge card on, very simple, they call up, and they order 3. One from my friend, one from my mother, whatever. What happens is that it has reached out to everybody. I had a wife that called me that her husband, they cannot pull the car into the garage anymore.
Why?
I said, what's the problem? The garage is full of all the things that my husband ordered, unopened. Didn't open it. So he
has an unopening addiction, or what?
It doesn't matter. You have the stuff. I don't need that. It's shopping. That means I gotta have it. Not the things that I need. I have it. I get goods. It's filling the hole.
So that's what I would like to, I want this conversation to continue, but we're out of time for the moment. But this idea of that I have to have, and this concept of what you just said now, David, which is filling this hole. Some people would say that there's a God-shaped hole in each of us, and the only thing that's going to fill it is spirituality, and for a member of the Jewish community, Torah and mitzvahs. Would you leave us with a thought on that? I'd like to continue the conversation. You certainly waited long enough to eat. I want you to be able to enjoy the food that we have, and we will continue this conversation. But if you would just, for the moment, address this issue of the fact that what you just said now, that there's a hole which needs to be filled, and not by a dentist, but there's a cavity that seems, any of these addictions seem to be sought after in order to fill, but it's not going to be filled by them. So what is?
But Peretz, I just want to tell you, my greatest simcha and happiness in life is to be able to sit down with you, a person with such experience in communications and understanding the community, in getting the word out to the masses, and being together with Hidabrut, which is filling a lot of the vacuum that's out there. Just a very quick idea, and that is, the Jewish people came and they complained to Moshe. They said, we don't got no food. We need food. We used to have in Egypt all this great stuff. So Moshe said, good, gather 70 elders and let them come, and they'll give Musar. These guys are asking for food, right? They're not asking for ethical reproach. They're not asking for, give us moral lessons. Moshe understood that if they're complaining about something physical, the real root of it is spiritual, that there is a thirst and a hunger. When we will take care of the hunger and thirst that all of us have, whether we know it or whether we not, our souls are on fire in this world that we live in, where anything can happen at any given minute, and everything is all topsy-turvy. British exits, United States gets a new president, and everybody is in upheaval about all the things that happen. There is a spiritual dearth. We all need to plug in to that power cell that gives us life, that gives our people life, and that will help with the addicted world, because we will become addicted to Torah, which is healthy, and that addiction will help us climb out from every other addiction.
Amen. The name of the book is The Addicted Soul by Rabbi Dovid Goldwasser, The World of Addiction, Internet, Gambling, Drinking, Shopping, Texting, and unfortunately, others. This is Peretz B. Eichler. We're going to have our meal here at Wolf & Lamb. By the way, if you mentioned that you saw it here on Hidabrut, you'll get a free sangria during the month of May. I want to thank Rabbi Dovid Goldwasser. I hope you will enjoy your meal, which we'll have now. This conversation, Bez Hashem, to be continued, I hope, and thank you so much. All right, thank you. So,
Thanks very much.
Rabbi Goldwasser, I wish you a te'avon.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. Thank you so much again for
Pleasure.
the bracha v'tzlacha. Thank you.
So to you.
Peretz be Eichler. Hidabru. Keep smiling. Keep going. Green light straight ahead. Remember the words of Hillel. The rest is commentary. Now, go and learn.